my friends, it is Mrs. Bierman here with a fun project for you to work on. This could be a really fun project and a really nice project to give away as a gift. It does turn out to be a beautiful vase of flowers that pop up from a background. It could easily be turned into a card, maybe a Mother's Day card, birthday card. You can give it to somebody special in your life, or you of course could just keep it for your family and decorate your home. So we are going to learn a little bit about the artist Vincent Van Gogh, and you will see some of his artwork next. Vincent van Gogh is one of the world's most famous artists. He was born in 1853 in a small town in the Netherlands. When he was a young adult, he moved to France and stayed in a small town called Arles. He stayed there for a long time. He loved that place. Every morning he got up and walked. He was fascinated by painting landscapes with trees, mountains, skies. He painted the house he lived in, even the bedroom. But there was one thing he liked to paint, what seemed like more than anything else, and that was sunflowers. His favorite color happened to be yellow, and he painted sunflowers, and he used yellow in most of his paintings, landscapes, sunsets, self-portraits, and other portraits. Thanks to our great friend and painter Vincent van Gogh, we have over 2,000 pieces of beautiful art that he created in his lifetime. If you look at his artwork closely, you'll notice the bright colors, the broken up brushstrokes, and the thick paint. Well, I hope you loved Vincent van Gogh's artwork as much as I do. I really connected to him when I was just starting my art degree in college, and I loved looking at his beautiful, bright, bold colors, but what really appealed to me was his use of paint and how thick he would put it on and how his colors would mix, but you could see all the different colors there. So I hope you enjoyed the pictures of his artwork. And right now we're gonna focus on his sunflower art, and we're gonna create our own vase of flowers. Now, you certainly do not need to create sunflowers. You can create any type of flowers that appeal to you. But what I recommend is starting with a piece of computer paper and folding it in half. Fold it in half. We're gonna work small for the flower vases for this project. Once I have it folded in half, I'm going to just cut half of it off. I'm only going to use half of that sheet. So down here I'm at about 5.5 inches, and here I'm at about 8.5. And we're still not even going to use this whole piece of paper. We're only going to go up about 3/4 of the way, just so that our bases, our backgrounds are strong enough to hold those. So we're going to start with drawing a cylinder shape. And you can draw your vase shape any way you'd like to. I'm going to keep mine similar to Vincent van Gogh's artwork. So I'm going to start way down here at the bottom, and I'm going to think about where I want my flowers to stop. So I'm going to just draw myself a line here. I could cut this part off if I wanted to. Again, I've gone up about 3/4 of the way or so. So I'm going to figure out that I want my vase about halfway into my workspace, and I'm going to start with a very slightly curved U-shaped line that is stretched out pretty good, and that's going to be the top lip of my vase. And then the bottom lip is going to go down here at the bottom, and I'm going to make that a little more narrow. You can connect these lines however appeal to you. I'm going to, again, create mine more like a Vincent van Gogh vase shape. So I start thin at the bottom, and I'm going to curve up towards the top like this. And I'm going to split that in half like Vincent van Gogh does with another curved line. At this point, you are ready to add your flowers, and depending on what you're using, you can start in different ways, but I'm always going to start with the middles of my flowers. So I know that I'm going to put a nice large one here. I'm going to have one that's tilting over here. I'm going to do one up closer to the top, one over here, and then maybe one here as well. So once I have those middles, I can add the details to the middles if I'd like to. Because I'm using watercolor paint, you're going to see some of my paint blend a little bit. You can do these middles in lots of different ways. That's completely up to you. whatever you'd like to. I'm keeping mine more like sunflowers, but you can do many, many, many different things depending on what you like. So there's the middles of my flowers. And now I know that I don't really want to see the pencil line of my vase going through. So I'm actually going to erase my pencil line, being careful of my wet paint. I just don't want the vase to be seen through my petals. I could give this a little bit of time to dry, but I'm going to just go quickly here. I'm going to show you the easiest way to add petals. I'm always going to start with the ones closest to me because those are going to be the ones in front, and I'm actually going to use a bigger brush for this. So when I use my bigger brush, one of the easiest things you can do to add petals is to do the stamp petals. So I'm going to just put some nice color on my paintbrush, and I'm going to go around and stamp those petals right onto my center of my flower. And that's a beautiful way to do that. Now you certainly can add petals in lots of different ways. You can paint them really carefully, and you can do, the beautiful shapes of a sunflower. But you can keep them as simple or as detailed as you want. Anything will be beautiful. Any colors that you choose will be beautiful. Just think about how colors work together and how neighbor colors always mix together really nicely, whereas colors across the color wheel from each other tend to turn kind of a brownish or a grayish, so be careful with that. If you're mixing all warm colors together, they tend to mix really nicely as well. But you go ahead and finish your flowers however you would like to. At this point, or when you're done finishing your flowers, you can also go ahead and paint your vase any color you'd like to. Keep in mind that when we do our backgrounds, we do want our flowers to stand out. So maybe pick a color vase that's different from the background that you think you're going to choose. But go ahead and finish your flowers and your vase at this point, and I'll see you in a few. I hope you enjoyed coloring your vase of flowers and creating some different beautiful bouquets of flowers there. Your next step when you're all done, notice that I did sign my name or my initials there on the vase, and I did put a little date there. That's up to you, and if you want to do that, that's great too. I did go through and add some stems and leaves just to add a little bit more color. But next you're going to cut this out, and you don't need to be really careful. You can go around the vase pretty easily when you cut, but when you go around your flowers, feel free to leave some of that white space around it. So you don't have to get into the teeny tiny little spaces. You can leave some white showing as like a little outline around them, and that would be just fine. So when you're done with that, when you're done cutting, you will have a piece that is something like this when you're done. My light's a little bit funny here now, but you'll have a flower vase cut out just like this, and your next step will be to take your background that you make. So the next thing I'm going to show you is a video on your background. Okay, I am going to show you part number 2 for this project. So you're going to need a white piece of paper, and computer paper will work just fine. You might want something a little bit heavier, like a white construction paper or a cardstock. That's what I have here. You can also use colored paper, although if you're using colored paper, it'll be harder to decorate. But go ahead and get your piece of white paper in front of you, and here we go. So I'm going to place it vertically in front of me, and we're going to be folding this. And yes, we could fold it just halfway, but I am going to take the bottom of my paper and I'm going to fold it up to almost the top. So if you can see this, my paper is actually ending right about here. I've left about an inch lip along the top here, just so that the top part is going to be a little bit longer, taller than the bottom part. Then I'm going to give that fold a good crease with my fingernail, and I am trying to really make sure that my edges are flush and exactly lined up with each other. Do the best that you can for that. When I unfold this paper, this is going to turn into my table down here at the bottom. And up near the top is going to be the wall behind my table. So everything up here is going to be my wall. And if you folded it like I did, the wall section for me is a little bit longer, a little bit taller. So at this point, you get to choose however you want to decorate this top part. And yes, you could definitely just color it all one solid color, but go ahead and come up with an interesting design. Let me see your creativity. Now, I'm going to do something rather simple. I'm going to just add diagonal stripes, just to keep it easy so that when I'm coloring I can do that quickly so we can move on to the next step. But you could decorate this with a Zentangle design. You could decorate this with a checkerboard. I think that's what I have in my example. So my example is a checkerboard on the top and just plain white at the bottom. You can go all out and you could color the bottom as well as the top. I'm going to keep it simple here with some stripes. So I'm going to go ahead and just color these stripes. I'm going to do it pretty quickly. I do recommend you taking your time, especially if you're using this as a gift for somebody. A couple quick reminders about marker usage, or if you're using crayons or colored pencils. Like always, I'm outlining the shape that I want to color in, and then I'm finding the thick side, the thick edge of my marker, and I'm keeping those strips of color all in one direction. I would do the same thing if I was coloring with crayon. I would try to keep all of my coloring strokes going in the same direction to keep it uniform and neat. My marker, I'm using those nice big thick strips. It will help me color it in neatly, but it will also help me color it in quickly because I have the thick side. So even though sometimes some of us think that scribbling with our markers or crayons goes the quickest, really, if you take the time and think about what you're doing and put these nice long strips of color, it really is worth it. And in the long run, it doesn't take any longer at all. So I'm just using those nice big strips of color with my marker, and I'm gonna finish that off right now. Okay, so we've got my background situated. I could color in my white spots and I could add a second color to that, but I'll just stop there for a second. I'm gonna go ahead and fold this back up. So a little bit of my wall is peeking in there. Now we could be really, really exact with this, and I could measure this and say, okay, this paper is exactly 8.5 inches. I'm going to mark halfway at 4 1/4, but you certainly do not have to be exact. If you just eyeball it and say, oh, that's pretty much the middle, that would be great. If you want to do exact measurings on either side, you can certainly do that. I'm going to do my not so perfect measurement. I'm going to just use 2 fingers. So on one side of my center line, I'm going to make a little mark where my 2 fingers end, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I should have pretty even marks there. So from there, I'm going to hopefully draw a pretty darn good vertical line. I do want it to stay pretty perpendicular at a right angle there to my bottom edge. I'm going to go up about a thumb's length, maybe 1.5 to 2 inches, but I'm going to draw my 2 vertical lines, and hopefully they're pretty evenly spaced. Now my lines look a little bit slanted. It should still work. Do as best as you can trying to get those nice and perpendicular. So from there, we are going to cut those 2 vertical lines. I hope that you're being careful and trying to keep those vertical lines the same length. I think mine look pretty good, okay? Once I get those 2 slits in there, I have this little flap. And with my flap, I'm going to fold it up this way. I'm gonna unfold it. I'm gonna flip my paper over. I'm going to fold it up the other way, and then put it back. And then I'm gonna open up my paper. And when I open up my paper, I'm going to be able to push this out from the back, and you are going to end up with this little, it almost looks like a little chair or a table sticking out the side of your paper. And that's what our flower vases are going to attach to. So I will be back to show you that. Okay, so now we have our cutout vase, and then we have the background that we created. So we have this, I showed you how to make your little table there as well. And I probably would go through and color my table. I would give it some sort of color there that's a contrast to my vase. I may or may not leave my squares white. That depends on how I'm feeling, I guess. But your very last step for this project is to just take a glue stick and glue your vase to that part that pops out. So I'm going to go ahead with my glue stick and just add that carefully here. And you should have a beautiful vase of flowers that pops out. I don't know if you can see that. A beautiful vase of flowers that pops out from the back of your paper. If you want it to be a little more solid, you could glue a piece of black paper or a larger sheet of construction paper behind it like a frame and have that come up behind it too. Or when you go to display it, you could just lean it up against a wall or a window. So I hope you had fun creating the pop art vase of flowers and learning more about Vincent Van Gogh. Have so much fun creating, and thank you for joining me for another art project. Have a great day, everyone.